There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Hello, welcome to the new episode of the Twilight Highlight Zone. I'm your host, Jeff Cork, joined today by my good friend, Ben Hanson.
Your best friend. Hello, Jeff Cork.
Best friend in all the room. And today, we are talking about episodes 11 through 15 of Season 5 of the Twilight Zone. And I have a little bone to pick with Netflix.
Yeah.
Because if you just go through like their sequential order, like as they see it, you're going to be all kinds of messed up and you won't know what's going on. Fortunately, I caught myself. If I'd left to their own devices, I would be completely out of control.
You should unsubscribe to Netflix because this is an egregious error and they've completely rearranged all the episodes in the 5th season.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
I don't know. It seems like keeping them in the original order would be the easiest thing to do.
I mean, not that it really matters for Twilight Zone, but it's nice to have that progress. I mean, you never really know what order they filmed it in, so
right.
it becomes a little bit tricky. Maybe that's what they're going off of.
It doesn't really matter until we start talking, and then I realize I haven't seen the episode you're discussing.
It only matters if you're recording a podcast series dedicated to covering each of these episodes chronologically.
That would be a problem.
I recommend Hulu.
Even your most skillful editing couldn't cover those tracks.
That's right. But Hulu, not even Hulu Plus, but they're all completely free. So you should definitely check it out.
Plus, you get to see a million commercials for Applebee's.
It's 173-second commercial breaks now.
Seriously?
It's really rough. There's one where a hot couple's eating ice cream and then they start making out or something and then they start screaming at each other.
God, the Italian one. And it's like some gelato.
Yeah. And I can't tell if it's real Italian. I want to get somebody who speaks it, Jeff Markufava, maybe to figure out all this stuff. But
yeah.
Hey, what's going on in Twilight Zone?
Let's talk about that.
All right.
Let's start off with a short drink from a certain fountain.
What does a short drink mean? Is that a time reference?
It's a brief drink.
A little sip.
They could have said a sip from a certain fountain, but people spoke differently back when they were filming these things.
Okay, so how does this one start?
So we start off in an apartment, and there is what appears to be a crazy party lady just spinning as this jazzy music's going on. She's holding a drink, knocks something off of a shelf.
There's a weird close-up of her face as she's just dancing,
losing her mind.
Yeah.
And then door opens, and husband comes in, right? And it's an old guy, and immediately, a May December romance, if you will, which Twilight Zone can only mean one thing, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So she's like, come dance with me, and he tries, and it's really embarrassing to watch because he just can't keep up.
He's too old.
Oh, I'm old.
He doesn't look that old. It's the Twilight Zone crappy aging makeup. So he looks more like a lizard than he does an old guy.
Exactly.
But he comes across as like roughly 60, and apparently 6-year-olds can't even jump and jive on a dance floor.
Well, people smoked a lot then too.
Oh, I see.
So that's probably what it was.
Uh-huh.
So she is immediately just the worst person ever. It's just like, I think I have the worst person nominee because she just is just awful. Like she throws a lit match onto the shag carpeting, and then when he attempts to retrieve it, she kind of chews him out for like showing concern about the possibility of their apartment burning down.
Her dancing around, she broke like this family artifact. She's like, what's it worth? $1.63? Bah!
Yeah, and he says, it belonged to my mom. It's sentimental value, which you wouldn't understand. And she keeps calling him Big Daddy. It's
very
super
creepy,
mockingly. Yeah. And you learn as they talk, they've been married for 5 years, and she's 40 years his junior. So that was a great move.
And she's learned to really hate him. At a certain point, she's screaming that his idea of the finer things is to listen to music at a mausoleum.
Yeah, and she snaps her... Well, she doesn't snap her fingers. But you think that if this were a contemporary show, she would do that and then walk through a beaded curtain or something.
Compare her and how miserable she is to be around compared to Uncle Simon, who just made a couple jokes, but otherwise seemed totally fine. Other than the whole building a robot in his basement thing, that guy is so much more likable than this person, who this guy chose to be married to.
Yeah, and the worst part is this being the Twilight Zone... She won't get any comeuppance. So we'll continue. She's just awful. So he calls the doctor. This guy's name is, by the way, Harmon Gordon.
There we go.
She's got 2 first names, which is and her name is Flora. So he calls his brother Raymond, who's also a doctor, says, please come over. So his brother comes over and he's like, oh boy, you look really tired. And
his brother definitely hates his wife. There's kind of some subtle references to like, oh God, you're still married to this lady. Don't have to talk to her.
He calls her a predatory alley cat. So it's pretty clear his thoughts on her.
Yeah.
So then it comes out, Raymond happens to be working on a serum, and they've been injecting animals with this serum, and it makes them young.
The
again.
cellular serum, they call it.
Yeah, and obviously, Harmon, being super old, is like, maybe you could, hook me up. And he's like, we're 20 years away from human trials, and we don't have no idea what this will do to a person's brain, because we've just been doing it on rats, and obviously rats aren't able to say, hey, this sucks. So, and he said, at best, you'd be a mutated freak, a gibbering idiot, or a mindless shell. Probably. So, Raymond goes to leave.
Yeah.
And then Harmon goes over to the balcony and looks over it.
Yeah.
And his brother runs back over, and you can immediately tell, he's looking over because he's going to jump.
Right.
So,
but what's interesting to me is that Harmon doesn't want to do this for himself, which is normally the case when somebody wants to go back in time. It's for fairly narcissistic reasons. He wants to do it just because he's so in love with his wife, and he can't stand the fact that she hates him. So he knows that if he becomes younger, she'll automatically love him again, or so he thinks.
Right. So it's not so he becomes young again so he can, kick her to the proverbial curb, as the younger people say. I've been injected with a youth serum recently, too. We can talk about that later. But anyway, the brother says, nah, fuck it. Here, I'll give you this shot. So he says, okay, the first effects you're going to feel in about 6 hours. And then there's kind of some ominous talk about, we don't know what's going to do to your brain, but, whatever.
Right.
So we cut to the next day. There's a knock on the door. It's the brother. And Flora's reading the newspaper, and she sees the brother, and she immediately just gives one of the best eye rolls I think I've seen in a very long time, because she's just not having it. She says, basically, he's asleep. And he says, well, does he look okay? And she's like, go in there and blow a bugle. So, ta-da, he comes out. Harmon does. And he's got dark hair, and it's a while until we see his face, because he's drying his face off with a towel.
Right.
Probably just wiping the makeup off, right? Is that what's going on?
Maybe. This is my big question with this scene. So believe it or not, he comes out looking younger, around 30, 40, something like that. But does he age twice in this scene? I couldn't tell if they're going for when he first comes out, he's a certain age, and then he's one step removed, even younger later on.
Yeah, because he's got a little bit of gray on the temples.
Okay,
but it's still predominantly dark on top.
Yeah.
And he jokes about, all I needed was a good night's sleep. And then he starts talking to Flora, saying, hey, let's go on a trip. We should go on an ocean trip, maybe go to Italy, go to Rome. It's up to you.
And she's immediately in love with him.
Oh, she's like, I don't care. I'm your passenger.
It's the simplest things. All you got to do to win the affection of your wife is to pull some magic and become a couple years younger. And then she's over the moon. She's randy. She's ready to go.
This is why they sell Just for Men, I think. So and then he looks in the mirror again, and it's all dark hair, and it's totally black. And then, Flora just shouts in horror, what's going on? What's going on? Because the brother is concerned. And, then it cuts again to a commercial break, and we come back. Flora's pacing. She wants to see him. And Raymond says, he's in shock right now. He's sleeping. And did you know at this point what was going on?
Well, I kind of ruined it for myself, because earlier in the episode, I wanted to know what that lady was from, because she seemed kind of familiar to me. So I looked her up on IMDb, and there were only 3 people listed, and it was Harmon, his wife's name, and then Baby Harmon. So clearly...
Yeah.
Baby Harmon went on to some big things, by the way.
Yeah, he was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, there we go.
Starring role of that. That's fantastic. So anyway, now that you've spoiled it for everybody. So she walks into the room, and the brother is saying, things are changing. The ground rules are changing. You can't just think about yourself now. You've got, your relationship's going to be a lot different. So she walks in, and then stunned, and looks like she's married to, looks like he's probably a 4.
Right,
I would say.
It's interesting that the serum makes you stop at 4. You think you just keep going until he was just a sperm wriggling on a bed.
Total Benjamin Button scenario.
The full BB, they call it.
So she obviously think that sucks. But then Raymond immediately has a grasp on how the whole estate works. And he's like, you leave here, you leave with just the clothes on your back. No inheritance or anything like that.
I don't know if that's how that works. I don't know if he really had the law on his side when he's like, if you walk out these doors, you will no longer be married to my brother, and therefore you won't get all of his rich things.
And then she says something about, that's crazy. His response, crazy? No, it's bizarre.
He seems surprisingly delighted by this whole situation. He's more happy just with the huge FU to the idea of this younger wife than the idea that oh, I really messed up my brother's
He
life.
shows absolutely no concern for the fact that his brother is a baby.
Maybe he realizes he's going to make $1 gazillion off this formula now.
But he doesn't know because he could still be a mutated freak, a gibbering idiot,
Right.
or a mindless shell, just because he happens to look like a little baby. I mean,
Right. So if you did stop at 4, would you take this serum? Or is that too far? I know you said earlier in this podcast you wanted to go back to 18.
do you retain your memories at 4?
I don't know. Did Harmon look like he knew what was going on in that bed?
He did not look like.
No, you don't. You have whiffs. You know, every once in a while you'll pick up something and know that something's a little bit off.
Horrible deja vu kind of stuff.
Not horrific, but just kind of premonitions type of thing.
I don't see the advantage if you don't retain your memories of.
Because you technically get to live for a long time.
Technically, but it would. You wouldn't have any memory of existing before, right?
So if you're on your deathbed, I mean, is it just neutral to you? If you're on your deathbed, you're 95,
yeah,
and I give you that offer, you would take it. Well, I hope you're ready for your deathbed, Cork. I'm going to come a knocking.
You got a lot of shots.
That's
You're
right.
going to experiment on me? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I feel sorry for any, age mismatched couples that are watching this episode, because the whole episode is just like this huge, well, it's your fault. You're stupid for trying to make this work.
Well, maybe don't be a completely horrible person. Or, the 40-year age difference is somewhat significant.
I guess so.
But, yeah, I want to talk about the brother for a second.
Yeah,
again.
please.
Let's really reiterate. Zero concern for the fact that his brother is a baby.
Only glee. Is he going to watch
so happy about it.
Is he going to watch the baby? Is he going to raise it with the guy's wife? Is he going to try and swoop in on the wife now that she's been, I don't know, humilified?
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, God, I don't know.
Yeah.
This one left me kind of speechless for a little while. It's just I don't understand if this punishment, you know what I mean? She was really terrible.
Yeah.
But this punishment involves more than just her, a big zinger on her.
Right. They try to spin it where it's well, he's been taking care of you for the last 5 years. Now it's your turn to take care of him and change his diapers and stuff. So I guess they're trying to draw that analogy that dating somebody 40 years younger than you is like changing diapers.
But if he had stayed that old, she'd be changing his diapers.
That's true.
Again anyway, right?
Yeah. And now, once that kid gets to be 18, she can really enjoy herself and they can finally go on that cruise.
Mm-hmm.
And she'll have to wear the old lizard makeup.
Yeah, exactly.
I think is how that works. This episode, it wasn't great, but I think it moved really well and it was completely unoffensive.
Yeah.
But mainly, I just felt maybe it's because of the first one out of the block, but I just felt like it flew by. So I gave it an old 5.
Yeah, I gave it a 6.
Okay.
I think it's interesting that the fact that it just flew by is enough for it to get kind of like a middling score. It's you didn't drag on like a lot of your preachy moral tales or
yeah
have a tendency to do.
Well, let's agree to immediately forget about that one.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Next one is called 90 Years Without Slumbering, which sounds like a pretty cool title. You think something interesting is actually going to happen here?
I just want to. The first thing I wrote on my notes here, and then I'll let you take it away. Old guy singing to a fucking clock.
Yeah, I wrote down a shitty dubbing of him singing.
And a song that has so many verses about a clock.
And then it's immediately followed up by a husband slapping his wife on the hiney.
Yeah.
As she's walking out of the room.
This has everything.
Yeah, it really has everything you want. Clock, singing, hiney. All right, so here's the situation. Edwin is back for the first time since One for the Angels.
Yep.
Which is like the second episode of the whole series. It's super early.
Yeah.
So he's back, and he is a grandfather living with his granddaughter and her husband. They are married, right?
They are married.
So, yeah.
They have a daughter or
a little wee one on the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all living together, and it all seems to be going pretty well. They all love the grandfather, except for the fact that he is super into this clock, this giant grandfather's clock that he's constantly winding up, and it just seems like the biggest pain in the ass. But every 48 hours, if you don't wind it up, it'll stop. And the catch is that he's convinced that when the clock stops, he will die, because his father also had a clock, and his father before him, and his father was 90, and the clock stopped, and then he died.
Right. Real quick, when they're having dinner, or they're at the breakfast table, the husband says to the wife something about, well, somebody's got to take care of the homely, and gives her like a little like condescending pinch on her chin.
It's just love. That's what love looks like, Cork.
Slapping and pinching. So.
and insulting.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, this episode is surprisingly familiar in structure to the Murderer's Row one, where this guy is just fully obsessed with clocks, and the other guy is fully obsessed with wax statues.
Yeah.
Except the clock does not murder anybody in the basement in this one.
Well, way to spoil it.
Yeah, sorry.
It's on the ground floor.
That's true. That's true. Well, he eventually moves it down to the ground floor and puts it up in front of a painting, and he's just really all in on this clock. But
that's because they make him see a psychiatrist.
That's right. So they want him to go to Mel, the psychiatrist, because
family friend.
Yeah, because they're so worried. Like, oh, you've met this guy before. Go visit him. Because they're so worried about him. But he's not a crazy person. They never pitch it like he's like cleaning the clock incessantly. I mean, I guess he is, but he always comes across as a very nice guy, just logically super into this clock. And then every once in a while, he mentions the fact that, oh yeah, by the way, this clock stops. I think I'm going to die.
Well, let's go. He also sings to the clock.
Yeah.
A song that really does take forever. And you hear like the couple is talking and you can still hear him going on about
fans of clocks would really like this episode because there's a lot of clock footage, a lot of clock talk.
I have never heard the word clock spoken as many times before as I did in this episode. Like at the end, I'm like, I've never thought about clocks this much. I've never written the word clock this many times.
And so he goes to see the psychiatrist, who is basically Chris Parnell from like 30 Rock, like that exact character. And then like every once in a while they try and be funny in this episode. And the psychiatrist makes some references like, oh, we've really gone off the track now. And then Edwin's like, oh, track? Are we talking about trains now? And the psychiatrist gets a good laugh out of that one.
Oh, there's also my favorite moment in a long time is when Sam, the psychiatrist, Mel, like mentions, oh yeah, I've got a grandfather. I've got a clock too. He's like, oh, you've got a clock? And he's super stoked to talk about someone who has a clock.
Yeah.
And he's just really into hearing all about the clock. Like the guy starts to describe it, and he's like, oh, wait a minute, we're here to talk about your
right.
clock.
That's I think when they even go off the track. And so the guy checks out as far as the psychiatric evaluation goes, and then he's on his way out, and he's like, oh, by the way, one more thing. I want to let you know that when that clock stops, I will totally die. It's very nice of him.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy to be like, oh, by the way, psychiatrist, I am crazy. And I just wanted to save it for the very end so that, you don't feel guilty for when this clock kills me.
There's something like in this block, there are a lot of really bad transitions. And this is like the first one that really stood out to me is that the scene ends like, oh, by the way, when this clock stops, I'll die. And then it moves over to the doctor. And he leans on this desk clock super awkwardly, and then it like fades into the grandfather clock's face. It's just such a weird like senior portrait. I'm leaning on a clock now.
Was that the commercial break then?
Yeah,
okay.
I think it must have been.
So anyways, now comes the point when Edwin wants to move the clock downstairs. And so there's a couple of movers that are helping him. And so he moves it down in front of like this painting in the middle of the living room or whatever. And then the clock stops. And then this is a commercial break because then Edwin like clutches his heart and just has this super lame like fall back onto the stairs as he's dying. Commercial break is over. It comes back and the clock's moving again and he's alive.
Right.
There's a weird false alarm. And so does that mean that the movers wound up the clock? Is that what was going on?
I think the clock is just not a great clock, ultimately.
Because it's 75 years old or
This
whatever.
is the same staircase, by the way. That guy totally bid it on Living Doll.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So somehow the clock got going again, and then he's just fine again.
Yeah.
So then he agrees that, hey, I'm obsessed with this clock. This is a real problem. So he agrees to sell it. And so he sells it to the neighbor. Everything seems to be going okay. He's like, oh, how's that clock doing? No, tell me about the clock.
Oh, he gives it to the friend, and he says,
right.
Well, I'll just have to come over for a few hours every other day.
Right. No big deal. Every 48 hours, I can totally do that.
Yeah.
But just so he can remain living in this house and watch like the birth of his great-grandchild and all that stuff.
And she's like, yeah, free clock, whatever.
Yeah. So she gets it. But then they go on vacation and he gets really worried because you have to wind it every 48 hours. So he tries to break in there. The cops find him. He's trying to explain to the cop. There's another weird transition where the cop's trying to talk him down and he won't have it. They bring him back to the house. He is kind of in pain because the clock has theoretically stopped or is super, super close to stopping at this point. So he goes to bed. His ghost then comes out of his body.
Yeah, it's like a classic Twilight Zone. I'm lying down.
Yeah.
And then it's superimposed his standing up. And then looking at his body.
Right. And then, of course, he makes a joke about like, oh, I can see right through you. And then the ghost is like, oh. It's real funny stuff. And And so then he's talking with the ghost, and the ghost is kind of reiterating, like, oh, it's this family legacy. Of course you're going to die with this clock. Clock, 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 clock. And so then he explains, like, oh, I've seen a psychiatrist, and that's not going to happen.
Yep.
Everything's fine. And then the clock stops, and the ghost fades away. And then he beats the clock because he explained to the ghost that it's not real. And so that kills the spirit, and I guess the spirit was a manifestation of his obsession with this clock. And then Rod Serling explains that clocks are made by men, but God makes time.
Mm-hmm.
And fading out to the credits.
And there's a weird kind of reference at the end that, oh yeah, by the way, Grandpa Sam was a clockmaker? Like
oh, really?
Yeah, like something about like, oh yeah, everything you learned. Something.
The ghost said this?
No, it was near the end. I can't remember where it was exactly, but he makes like a reference about using all his knowledge from clockmaking. It's like, well, I guess do what you love.
Yeah, I guess he should have referenced it at some point earlier in the episode. But I liked Edwin's performance in this.
Mm-hmm.
Thought that was okay. It wasn't offensive.
No.
Just a little boring.
It's a pretty dumb idea. I like the little exchange at the end, where he's like arguing with himself, kind of basically,
right.
But yeah, this is pretty stupid when you think about it. And maybe I want to live to see my great-grandchild, and I've got all this stuff to live for, and having to wind a clock all the time is really dumb.
I would love to be in the pitch meeting for this with Serling and the writer, because I don't think Serling wrote this. But just the idea would be like, okay, this guy that really likes clocks. It's kind of like, if the clock doesn't wind up, he dies. But let's put a fun spin on it. It's not make it serious.
Serling like closes his eyes. He's hiding behind his bushy eyebrows, and then the guy reaches over to Serling's sleepy hand and sticks the rubber stamp. Approved. Done.
And then it was put in production. So I ended up giving this one a 4.
I gave it a 5.
Okay.
It's just right
there it is. That's certainly an episode. It's a little bit below par. I don't know if this might be in debate for the most aggressively mediocre, but I'm not going to give it to it right now.
No, I'm glad.
Cork, I am so glad I don't have to describe this next episode. It makes me so happy.
Oh, no.
Take it away,
Look at my notes. So here we have Ring-a-Ding Girl.
Oh, boy. Could mean anything.
Ring-a-Ding Girl. So this one we start off, an actress is talking to her publicist. Is that what that was?
Yeah, agent, publicist,
whatever. And she's talking about her hometown of Howardville. She just got a letter from a fan, and it was attached to that was like a ring.
Yeah.
Because you learn that the actress, her nickname she's Bunny Blake. She's the Ring-a-Ding Girl. And the publicist talks about, her stroke of genius is, obviously, as the Ring-a-Ding Girl, it's a pretty clever trick to have her collect rings. So
just every movie she's in, she has to wear a ton of rings.
I don't know.
Like a period piece. Yeah. So
she gets this ring, and the Ring-a-Ding Girl puts it on, and then looks at it, and then you see smoke in the ring, and it goes, ooh, and you see the lady's face. Come home, Bunny. Come home.
This is Hildy, Bunny.
Yeah, this is Hildy. Home. Come home. So then we go to the next scene, and it's just a boy reading a paper, and he's super whiny. It's like I wrote down he's a proto Luke Skywalker, because he basically doesn't want to do any chores or anything like that. And you see Hildy, the lady who we just saw last in a ring, and she's vacuuming. And then Bunny surprises her and says, "Hey, I'm here. Surprise." And you learn it's her sister, and they talk, and you find out that the whole town chipped in because they're so proud of the Ring-a-Ding Girl, and they bought that ring, and aren't you supposed to be in Rome? Well, I'm supposed to be in Rome, but I just wanted to swing by Howardville. And
I went to the airport, then I decided, no way.
Yeah.
I need to save Howardville.
Save Howardville. And then you'll learn that it's the day of the Founders Day picnic. This is a real small town.
Right.
And Founders Day picnic. So then she's kind of freaking out about the idea of the picnic for some reason. And then she gazes into her ring again.
And the sci-fi strings are
yeah.
And then up again.
And then you see a guy in the ring, and he says something about, I'm your TV guy. Come home, Bunny.
We need you, Bunny.
We need you, Bunny.
Yeah.
And then she faints. So when she comes to, there's a doctor, and he is totally not impressed with the Ring-a-Ding Girl. He's just like, so what is it you do in Hollywood again? Whatever. Right. And she says to the doc, hey, you got a lot of pull in this town. Why don't you do me a favor and postpone the picnic? And he's like, nope. And then he says something like, here's some pill. He has a prescription. Here's something to help her rest. And you hear the theremin again. And once again, the ring, she looks in it and it's an old guy and he's chewing her out saying, you think you're something special. Well, you're a special person now. You're the most special person. Help.
Okay, at this point, let's just take a little break. When you're watching this, do you have any idea what the F is happening?
I don't even know. They lost me when they said, you're the ring-a-ding girl. And I'm waiting, like, what's going on with the ring-a-ding?
What does it have to do with anything? And it's like, is she scared of the ring? Like, you can't really...
Why does she keep looking at it?
She keeps looking at it and is horrified. And so the part that I liked is throughout the course of the episode, I was like, oh, I think she's just a crazy person.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe she never went to Hollywood at all. Maybe all these people are just imagining that she did. And that's going to be the course of the episode. She's just slowly revealed to be just completely insane and she's going to fall apart.
This is a Mulholland Drive. Yeah, that's what's going on here.
I thought we're Mulholland U Drive. But
that'll come up later.
That's right. But that's not happening here.
No. So the doctor says, hey, give her these drugs. She's suffering from fatigue because at this point, after she saw the old guy, she ran up the stairs. So she comes back down. She's like, I'm fine, whatever. And she asks about the first guy that she saw in the ring.
Yeah.
And we learned, he owns a TV station. So
she's like, he had a crush on me back in the day. So she grabs the son.
Married him. Yeah.
She's like, hey, bud, want to go for a walk and say hey to people? And she's super weird and flirty with her nephew.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, what a strapping young lad and all this crap. Yeah. Let's go for a ride in the convertible.
So before they go outside, you hear thunder. And she goes outside and she says, ring-a-ding.
Fade to
for the
commercial.
First time.
Yeah. And that is the worst transition in this entire block. Like, that's their big stinger before the commercial break is her hearing thunder and then saying the words ring-a-ding.
Yeah. Then you go outside and he's got a really cool car.
She
says ring-a-ding. And so she goes and asks about the old guy, Mr. Gentry. You find out he's the caretaker for the school. And Bunny goes over to the school and is like, please make sure that the doors to the school auditorium are open. And he's like, screw you. You always thought you were too good for this town. P.S. The doors are always open.
Right.
Now who looks like a fool?
So she agrees to put on her famous one-woman show at the exact same time as the picnic.
We're not there yet.
Oh, God.
Because there's more thunder. I want to agonize over every turn of the screw with this because there's a lot of stuff going on here. Swings by the TV station and she tells the guy, don't go to the picnic. And there's more thunder. Then the phone rings and Hildy answers it back at home. And it's a friend says, hey, Bunny's on TV. So she turns it on and then you see Bunny saying, hey, everybody, that picnic sucks. You should go see me because I'm going to put on my special one-woman show you heard about in Vegas.
Right.
So it's in the auditorium. It's going to be great. And it's at the same time as the picnic.
Sorry, but you have to choose if you want to go to some dumb picnic or see this amazing ring-a-ding girl show.
And then instantly, I don't know if this must not have been live television. That must have been a pre-recorded segment. Bunny comes in the door and Hilda's like, okay, here's the deal. You look like a complete show-off, Bunny Blake.
Right.
And
then there's a weird reference to their childhood. Mm-hmm. This is my favorite piece of dialogue from this episode, where Hildy goes, fun, wasn't it? Being kids? And then Bunny Blake goes, it was very good.
Yeah. And then she looks at the ring again because she just can't stop at this point.
Right.
And you see it's an airplane and it's her sitting next to her manager on the plane and the manager's saying, forget Howardsville. And then we cut back and Bud can't find his tie. It's storming.
Uh-huh.
And at this point, I'm wondering who would go to the picnic, even if you don't want to see this one-woman show, which sounds completely terrible. Why would you go to a picnic, Founders Day or not? Because it's raining outside. But anyway, so she goes to get her coat. Oh, you'll never believe what she does next.
She walks out into the rain.
She involves a ring.
Oh, no.
And she looks in the ring and there's the captain. This is the captain. Put on your seatbelts.
Uh-huh.
And then suddenly we hear fire engines and ambulances. And Bunny says goodbye and walks outside.
And fades away.
Right. And then suddenly you hear there's like a plane crash. Oh my gosh. It was from Los Angeles to New York.
Uh-huh.
It crashed on the site of the Founders Day picnic.
And then like the radio broadcaster is explaining that like they found a body of Bonnie Blake at the plane crash site. But Bonnie Blake has also been reported in the town and on TV that day. Then he goes, all we know for sure is that she's dead.
Oh,
like, well, I don't think so. You just listed two very conflicting things.
Yeah.
But all right, sure.
Yeah,
You're confident that she's dead.
And then Hildy looks, and there's the ring on the floor.
The old ring-a-ding ring.
And she looks inside of it, and it's just a ring.
Okay. So what is happening here?
Whew. I think that I don't fully know.
I went back to the beginning again because
Yeah.
maybe I missed something because maybe they packed more story into that beginning. But no, it is just the agent talking about going on that trip.
Yeah.
And then you were right in the town.
Right. Because you'd think, like, okay, what happened is that she was able to warn everybody, which she did.
Right.
But the whole fact that she was interacting with everyone, so it wasn't just like, usually in these kinds of stories, it's just the sister who sees her.
Right.
And then has to convince everyone, I saw her, I was hanging out with her, and then no one believes that person because obviously it's a silly thing to believe. But she was on television.
She was flirting around town all day.
She was on television to the point where enough people went to that auditorium to see the one-woman show.
Right.
But, oh yeah, P.S., she was killed on the plane.
The part that's really, well, I like the image as well, is because, like, the guy calls Hildy to let her know that they found her corpse. They're like, oh no, she's sitting in the seat next to some other lady. But I like the idea that, like, amidst this flaming wreckage, there's just like her corpse sitting in a seat.
That's her.
It's very yeah, but I the part that confuses me is the images in the ring shift from being of Howardville for the first half while she's still in Howardville to then the second half of the episode, they're images of the plane.
The plane, yeah.
What is going, like, why that shift?
It seems like it's
trying to clue you in?
Yeah, because I don't know what this information is supposed to do to her, like to show, oh, maybe I should have been on this plane all along, or am I on this plane
My
all
body
along,
is on that plane. I mean, because throughout the episode, like, the only thing I could reason was going on is like, okay, she got a warning in her ring that some terrible things are going to happen at this picnic, and she doesn't want anybody to know, doesn't want anybody to go, but they don't really let on to that, or like we don't get to see her warning from the ring or anything. All we get is come help us.
Maybe let's have a pact.
Yeah.
If something like this ever happens, you can come to me and say,
I am a ghost.
get a load of this crazy ring and I will look at it with you. Okay.
Hey, listen more closely to the theremin. It's really great. Yeah. Boy, I wanted to like this episode.
Yeah.
I was really hoping it was going to have a more cool twist, and I guess I like the twist. But it just didn't really make sense, ultimately.
No.
I gave it a 4.
At last we meet.
All right, finally. All right, cool. Moving on to higher ground here with a really great title. I really like this. This one's called You Drive.
Yep.
You cannot get a better title than that.
Really?
For the entire season, it's my favorite title so far. I know we're only 14 in or something like that.
Okay.
But it's definitely my favorite. All right. So anyways, there's this guy named Ollie, and Rod Serling introduces us to him, and with the introduction of Portrait of a Nervous Man. And he's driving in his car, right? Driving home from work. He's very stressed out at work. He's driving home. He hits a paper boy and keeps on driving. That's how the episode opens. Good, solid opening.
Well, he gets out and then gets back in, and then a lady sees him, though.
Right. This old lady, yeah. And so he goes all the way home. His wife notices, well, first of all, we got to have the Serling reveal because, Serling is doing the narration in the beginning, and then it does a whip pan from the driving shot over to Rod Serling, and he is then sitting in front of they try to make it look like he's outside in the LA style area, but it's just a painting of some palm trees behind him. It just looks like crap. Anyway, so this guy eventually drives home, and his wife notices that he's flustered, but he's just immediately talking about work, oh, this Pete Radcliffe is after my job. Oh boy, I'm so stressed out. And he lies down on his couch, which he's on most of the time. So I'm trying to remember. I think it's that the horn starts honking in the car.
Wife says, hey, someone's in the garage. And then he walks in and the headlights are flashing.
Right. And the music's going.
Yes, this is a cool thing. I'm glad you pick up.
Yeah. So the music, it's the non-diegetic music. It's yeah. So then the headlights are flashing. And so then he walks over and he turns the key in the car just to double check it. And then the second he does that, the music from Twilight Zone shuts off and the headlights are off. And he's like, okay, well, there we go. And there's also a fun mention where the wife mentions oh, the paper boy's late. That's weird. He's not normally late. And so this guy's getting more and more nervous. So immediately we're on a good track because it's a self-aware car. trying to link him to the scene of the crime.
Right.
Which is just a great premise for the whole episode.
Uh-huh.
So as it unfolds, it's basically the Telltale Heart, but it's the car instead of a beating heart.
Exactly.
And so, oh man, so much happens here. So it goes on, and the car just keeps reacting more and more, eventually to the point that the wife is like, well, I'm going to drive it into the shop to take care of it.
Because it's like honking.
Yeah.
And
it's keeping him awake at night. It's blasting music and stuff. And so the wife decides to drive it into the mechanic. And so she gets in it, and how does this work? Oh, no, so she's driving it, and then it starts driving itself, and she gets super freaked out, and it just drives itself to the scene of the crime where he hit the paperboy, and then just stops.
Yep.
The car just shuts itself off.
And it just creates this awful traffic jam.
Yeah. It's not like the car's trying to speak. It's just a very subtle car.
Yeah.
So the wife gets out, brings the car to the repair shop then, because she knows that something's up. By the time she gets back from the repair shop, basically, the car is back in the garage.
Yeah.
And so he calls up the mechanic, or the mechanic calls him, and they're just talking. He's like, well, I'm not going to pay for this because you didn't touch the car. And who delivered it anyway? And the mechanic's like, no one delivered it. You must have come picked it up. And he's like, nope, I did not do that. He's like, well, it didn't drive itself, certainly.
So then the doorbell rings, though.
Yeah.
And he does a classic, well, if anyone asks for me, I'm not home.
Right.
And at this point, you know, he's called the hospital earlier and, you know, just to check the condition of the boy. And like, apparently this kid's not in great shape.
Right.
And it's Pete.
Pete Radcliffe comes in.
Ugh.
And my favorite part is that he tells his wife that he has the flu. And so his wife tries to explain to Pete Radcliffe that he's the flu. But Pete just does not care. And he just storms right in, wakes this guy up, and then immediately is shaking his hand and talking in his face.
He's like gone through his in basket at work and all this other stuff. You could tell that there's some real tension between those two.
Yeah, it works well. And then he's also talking about how he knew that little boy that was hit by the car, and he feels so bad, and that the kid's dead.
Yeah, that's why he's a little flustered. Pete is, and he apologizes. Wow, you feel bad for this Pete guy. You know, those Ollie guys. He hit a kid.
He hit a kid.
Not a great guy.
No. So Pete Radcliffe is then driving home. And there's this great moment where there is a police kind of camping out by the scene of the crime, because criminals always return to the scene of the crime, naturally.
Especially hit and run, because you want to go there and gloat.
Hey, remember when I hit that kid? So anyways, they're sitting there looking at the scene of the crime. Pete Radcliffe drives by, and the lady who was there that day pinpoints Pete from the moving car and says, "That's him, officer. That's him." This guy's driving by at like 30 miles an hour, but she detects him. It's a completely different car.
Oh, it's like a 2-stage ID. He's like, "That's him. I think that's him, officer." He's like, "Well, I can't just stop him. You gotta be sure." "Oh yeah, it's totally him then."
Right. So he pulls over Pete and he's like, "Hey, I think you need to come with me because you've been connected with this hit and run." And Pete's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't involved." And then the officer just says, "Well, I got a witness says you're wrong."
Dun, dun,
One
dun.
witness.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. So they bring Pete in. So the car is still in the garage and it's really losing its mind. It's like blasting the radio with like the news report of the kid dying and stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Well, at this point, Ollie is just totally smug now because he's read in the paper that Pete has been arrested.
Right,
and he's just like loving it. He's like, "I don't have to worry about my job anymore. Everything's coming up, Ollie."
Yeah. And so, but when it's making noise, he goes down there and like he gets really close to the car, and then the car like drops its bumper. It's like tearing itself apart because it wants to get at this guy so badly.
Yeah, on the radio, it's doing like the report of the kid was dead.
But this is the part where it really sunk into me that it's so nice that this car just isn't trying to kill him.
Yeah.
Like that would have been such an easy living doll type story. And the car just could have pinned him against the wall, but it's not. It's just trying to alert him or make him feel guilty, you know?
Yeah, 'cause like what's interesting about the radio report is like the fact that it just keeps cycling. You know, it's like on a loop. But the report also names the witness and names the person who was arrested, including his address. It's like, wow, if you really want to form a lynch mob, either side, you know, if you want to go get the witness or you want to go after this Pete fellow, here's all the information that you need. But and then he like the hood comes up and he's like banging on it. So I was like, oh, the car's going to run over him.
But it just doesn't happen.
It doesn't.
But it's like it's kind of like a living doll situation though, where he can't really destroy the car. I mean, the best he could do is like drive it into the swamp out by Bates Motel.
Yeah,
just a little lower it in there. It's like there's no way you can really imprison this thing because he'll just drive right back. So he stays remarkably calm with his wife throughout this whole episode. He's not like a total spaz. He's just a guilt-ridden guy. Pretty well acted. And so then he is walking to work, and his wife's like, "Why aren't you taking the car?" He's like, "I just want to take the car.
I'll sell it."
Yeah, so
whatever.
So then he's walking to work, and then the car, of course, comes. out of the garage, and the wife just has this look of horror, like she's trying to scream and can't even scream. And then this is my favorite part, because the car just kind of like pulls alongside Ollie. And then he does this move where he sees it. He clearly sees there's no driver, and he just starts walking super slow.
Oh, it's awesome.
It's like he's trying to beat the car by walking slower than it can drive.
He's playing it cool.
Yeah, and then he goes for the spazzy, turn around and tries to run the other way. And the car chases him down.
It's raining. Yeah,
it's great. And so then Ollie finds himself in the middle of the road, like he trips and falls.
He trips and falls right on the rain.
Right. And then the car's coming barreling towards him. And this is the make or break for Twilight Zone. This freaking car gets right up to him, slams on the brakes, like, and spares his head by a couple inches. So like that would have been the moment where the car could have wiped him out, but the car is just a moral car.
Yes.
And so then he gets in it and it drops him.
That's the best part is he stands up.
Yeah.
The passenger door opens.
Right.
And it doesn't like beep out, get in or anything like that. It's just the door opens and it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. So then he gets in and the car drives him to the police station and just lets him out. And that's the end of the episode. It's just like, well, it's implied that he just felt so guilty and his car was a manifestation of that guilt.
It really is a reverse Christine in a way.
Yeah, I guess it is. And then Serling warns us like, hey, if you're ever thinking about committing a crime with your car, don't, because it might be alive.
You never know.
Your car might have a conscience, I think is how
that's what he says.
Yeah. You never know. This is a good episode that definitely falls in that camp of like, I mean, it's not as silly. It's not like the car's making dumb noises, but it's in that ballpark of Franklin and Think About Machines.
Yes.
Where it's, in fact, Think About Machines, there was a car that drove itself.
Yeah.
Probably the same car.
Only that one knocked a guy into the swimming pool.
That's right. And he sunk to the bottom, which is weird. So this episode really stood out in this block.
Yeah.
I ended up giving this one a 7.
I gave this one a 7 as well.
Okay.
I thought this was a super fun one. I like the fact that, like we talked about it just a moment ago. I like the fact that it didn't kill him. It was never out for blood.
Right.
But it was just like, dude.
Come on, dude.
Come on. I'm keeping up with the news. I know that the kid died.
Ever the news. Oh, boy.
Yeah. And no one's going to want to buy me when you ripped all my radio wires and broke a headlight.
Plus, it's kind of a nice nod back to the episode where the car was possessed at the used car lot, and it made him tell the truth. Yeah. And then Nikita Khrushchev bought the car. God, Twilight Zone's stupid.
It really is the best.
But it's interesting. I mean, we both give it a 7, but I think we're both pretty excited about this one just when we were talking about it.
Yeah.
Maybe just because it stands right next to all these other duds, but...
Yeah.
Speaking of duds,
take
it away.
This one's called The Long Morrow. Here we go. We start off with a dude wearing briefs, frozen in what looks to be a block of ice.
It's the exact same case as the Rip Van Winkle caper, that one where they froze themselves in.
But he's not in a cave; he's in a spaceship.
That's right.
So he's doing like a flashback talking about time and the passage of time and blah, blah, blah. And then he takes us back. So this guy is Commander Douglas Stansfield. He's an astronaut. And he meets you with the doctor. And the doctor says, hey, we've been looking at our neighbors in space and, they're all accessible, but they offer us nothing. So what we're going to be doing is sending a one-man spacecraft to another solar system. And that'll happen in about 6 months, and it's going to be one dude, and it'll be you. And the guy's like, I like this assignment very much.
Because he explained that Pluto was poisonous, of course. And there's a lot of great moments here. So they have the horrible astronomy lesson of they're pointing at a nebula. It's like, this is the other solar system.
Oh, he says, you recognize this. He's like, oh, it's our solar system. And he starts pointing things out.
Right.
This is our sun. This is... blah, blah, blah. The planets I don't know any planets been.
No, and then he's talking about why they need to send a person. There's no real justification except for the fact that he says science has solved the mechanical affairs and now it's up to one man to breathe life into blueprints and computers.
Yes. So we're going to send you 141 light years away in a ship that's equipped with an interstellar drive.
By the way, just this one guy's choosing to send him. This entire episode is surprisingly vacant. There's 3 characters in it.
Yes.
It's supposed to be this huge space operation, but anyways.
There's only really 2 sets, which is weird too. So anyway, this interstellar drive will allow this one-man ship to go 70 times the speed of light. But even then, the trip will take about 40 years. But we know that the way that time will pass, we're going to be putting you...
like a sleep or whatever?
Yeah, we're going to be putting you in a... Wait. Pause for a second. Okay. We'll have to back that up for a second.
Sure.
So the trip's going to take about 4 years. It goes back to the brief shot, and he's all cold and frozen.
Yeah.
And he's saying, well, it would have been easy except for a third character entered the scene.
Right.
And that's when we cut to this lady scientist. Her name is Sandra Horn, and she drops some papers. And this is really interesting. I'm sure you've noticed this because you've got a good eye for this stuff.
Uh-huh.
They have this conversation, and it's like cutting between him and her. Did you notice the way that those were shot were completely different?
No. Like hers, it's always like a super soft focus.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like they do that for every lady in the Twilight Zone, yeah.
This one just really stood out to me.
Sure.
But anyway, they're talking, and he immediately just starts flirting with her. And
very awkward flirting, but she seems to be into it, I guess.
At the end, he gives her a handshake, and then it turns into this creepy hand rub and this dinner invitation where she's like, my number's in the book. He's like, I'm not calling it. I'm going to pick you up at 8. Go to a restaurant. So then we go back to the doctor, and we learn that this guy's 31, which if he's 31, I'd be very surprised. This actor looks like he's probably in his mid-40s.
Sure.
And we learn that he's going to be put in a state of suspended animation while he's on this ship, and so he won't age. So then...
But it's going to take 40 years.
It's going to take 40 years, right. So then we go to the couple again, and he's leaving at this point in a month, right?
And they're dancing.
They're dancing. They've only known each other 3.5 hours, and already she's feeling this sense of loss.
Right.
And then
I guess I didn't pick up on that idea that I thought that was their only date, but they made it clear that he's leaving in a month from then.
He's got a month.
Okay,
right.
So they spent a month together.
This was their first date. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I guess I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah. So then we go back to the spaceship, and he's having his flashback, and it's like April 19th, 1988.
Right.
And he's having another voiceover. God, so many voiceovers. He's just wondering about Sandy, and you see his face, and this is the other awkward superimposed shot in this block that really stood out, where it's his face, and you're kind of looking up at an angle a little bit, and his nostrils are kind of her eyes at the same time when it's like fading in and out, and then he just keeps talking about, I love you, Sandy. And then you see as he's leaving to go on the ship, gives her a big movie kiss.
And she explains that this is a small, unofficial gesture from a lower-level bureaucrat of our good, grave, respectable government.
Yeah.
And then she goes in for the kiss.
Yes. And then she says that her life will essentially be meaningless and empty without him to share it.
This is the moment when this episode gets sad, where she's like, well, yeah, my life is meaningless.
And
I'm completely dull without you. I've known you, what I thought was only 3.5 hours, but it turns out it's a full month. But still. After dating somebody for a month. You can cool it, astronaut.
Cool your space jets.
Hot astronaut lady.
Well, this is what's interesting about that, too, is that this guy doesn't have any personality at all, okay?
Zero.
He has zero charisma. He's like a pretty good-looking dude.
Sure.
She's funny. She seems like she's got some...
They seem okay.
But there's no passion aside from the time that they press their faces against each other really hard.
Right.
So I think it really would have helped if we'd kind of established this guy. Maybe he's an astronaut, obviously, but if he came out like kind of jokey or did something to show that there would be a reason why she loved him with such a passion to where,
or even if they went the other direction and just explained that he's a complete loser nerd.
Yeah.
And that would explain that, like, if he's never had a girlfriend before and he spends this one night with this amazing lady and then that's his obsession.
Right.
But he's just like, an average dude who happens to be 31. And it's like he's never talked to a lady before and he just can't get Sandy out of his head.
No, because he touched her hand that time too.
The whole episode hinges on this love story, and the love story is super shallow.
It's awful.
Yeah.
And she's talking about, like, the next time you see me, I'll just be this old lady with a blanket and waving a little flag or something. Right. So she's going to be in her 60s or 70s.
But he says he's coming for her anyway.
I'll come for you because it's been a month.
I'm going to touch your old body, he says.
So then we cut to the rocket taking off, which is not innuendo. It's just a rocket taking off as we're going into space. And we fast forward, and I like this part a lot. It's a couple guys in the future, and they're talking about, hey, one of those old missions is coming back. And this is when it gets super sad.
Yeah, I like this part too.
And then they're like, there's some notes from the doctor. He must have been running the operation. He says, got to find this lady named Sandra. She's been put in the hibernation room.
Right.
And at that moment, it's like, oh, no.
But my favorite part is in that conversation when they're like, oh, yeah, he was checking out that one solar system, which we totally checked out 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So, like, the technology had leapfrogged in a way while he was just drifting through space. They totally checked it out and found out there was absolutely nothing in that solar system. So his entire mission was meaningless. And he just stepped off the rocket and then came back,
Yeah. So Doug's ship lands, and there's a communications error. So he was not able to like check in, although I don't know what kind of conversations.
Snoring, checking in. Yeah, I don't know how that works.
Easy. So there's only some contact, and at one point he removed himself from hibernation.
Right.
So that happened 6 months after the ship left Earth. So this guy talks to Sandy. She looks great. She's wearing like a sparkly space dress because it's 40 years in the future or whatever.
Right.
And he's saying, you got to realize, here's the deal. He has been so bored in that cockpit and so lonely. So don't expect to see the man that you saw a while ago. I
like that they really give her a chance to like, hey, just so you know, I know you've been waiting 40 years in sleep for this, but something's up.
Yeah, no pressure, but he's at the end of this hallway backlit. So and he's going to be walking toward us super slowly. And he comes down the hall, and then you see her reaction, and she's like trying to hold it in. You can tell she's not loving it, but she at the same time. And then it shows him, and you see The Exorcist, right?
No.
Well, this reference will make absolutely zero sense to you. Every once in a while, they do these quick shots of this spooky demon face.
Okay.
With this ghoulish makeup.
Sure.
That's what he looks like. This is this is the worst age makeup I've seen. It's supposed to be age makeup.
Cliffordville?
This is worse than that. Because this looks like someone just drew fat lines on their face. Like he's just wearing too much like rouge or something.
Yeah.
And he basically tells her, that to go away.
But first, he explains, she's like, do you remember me? He's like, I've remembered you for 40 years.
I haven't stopped thinking about you. And I mean, like if the shots of him remembering stuff in that block of ice is any indication, this ship does not have a lot of room.
No, let alone a lot of food.
This guy would be a fucking maniac. He would have like had claws and a giant beard.
Well, maybe there's like a crazy montage of them trying to clean him up after he arrived. He's just covered in his own feces. Yeah, maybe like they gave him an extra year of padding to try and like teach him how to be a human being again. He's just a feral maniac.
Because
40 years by himself. Who knows how he survived?
And the communication stuff's broken, so you don't even. This podcasting room, no one can see it, is a fairly good sized room.
Right. And
if we had unlimited food, I would not want to be in here for 1 decade.
But what if you actually loved a woman?
This changes everything.
So yeah, then he just sends her away. Even though she seemed fine with the idea of being with an older guy.
And then the guy, the military guy from the future, just is like in awe of his sacrifice. What does he call it?
I don't know.
He just says, I'm amazed that you would do this for love.
For America. Yeah. So it's interesting that 2 episodes in this block are about like the incompatibility of age differences in a relationship. It's like, nope, it doesn't work either way. What are you going to do?
This episode is basically the trade-ins.
Yeah, a heartbreaking version of the trade-ins.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah, it is surprisingly similar. Like if they were just disconnected in their freezing states or their body transmission states.
It's like a sacrifice gone wrong and it's irreversible.
Right.
Because he's not able to go back to his younger self and she's not able to age quickly so they're compatible again. It's just like, well.
And that's the thing with this episode. Like emotionally, it was super weak. The love story sucked.
Yeah.
But you got to give it up. It is a fun idea. The idea of like, oh God, they blew it. And he decided to age himself. She decided to freeze herself.
The thing that I don't understand here is, and it would have been helpful, technology obviously made advances while he was adrift in space.
So they could have aged her rapidly?
No. My question is, they went to the planet while it took him forever to get there. So how long was it until they had like built this hibernation chamber? Was she living her life, or was it just like her immediate decision? Like, was this something they could have spoken about before he went onto the spaceship?
Absolutely. I completely imagined that they could have spoken about it. Then they had one on Earth. Or like your idea is like he takes off, some time goes by, and then she's like, by the way, build me a hibernation chamber because I'm in love.
Yes.
Okay.
Because that seems like a conversation you would want to have if like the second that you find out that you're on a spaceship and they have this nutrient bath from like the lymph nodes of hibernating animals and cells and vitamins and stuff.
In terms of important relationship conversations, it certainly seems up there.
Yeah, you would ask the doctor, okay, here's the deal. I'm sacrificing essentially 40 years of my life, even though it won't seem that way. Can you make another one of these things?
Yeah.
And stick my lady friend in it?
Right. Or can she come with me?
Yeah.
That sounds like a lovely cruise.
Because the fact that they were able to do that, she hasn't aged at all, right? It would have been nice if they had a conversation like, oh, she went into the hibernation chamber 10 years after he took off. So that at least, so you knew that he didn't know that there was that possibility.
I want more exposition in my Twilight Zones. I'm with you, Cork.
Well, it seems like he could have maybe mentioned that, or she could have mentioned that instead of him just talking about love and time passing and
I gave this one a 6.
I think we are finally aligned. We got 3 in a row. I gave it a 6 as well.
That's pretty sweet. Let's keep riding this baby to the end.
Let's do it.
Cool. All right. We are coming up on halfway through the final season of Twilight Zone. So thanks for listening, everybody. If you've listened to every episode of this, and especially if you've listened to every episode and watched every episode, you're a real trooper. And we're going to send you out a windbreaker.
What?
The Twilight Highlights on windbreaker. It's coming your way. Heads up.
Check your mailbox, right?
That's right.
I can't wait to see how you do this.
All right. You want to sign us off?
Let's sign us off.
Please.
We'll see you next week. Twilight Highlights. Ding. I'm gonna have a short drink from a fountain. It's a certain fountain. Feels like the first time.
Check the levels.
Nope. Yep.
Nope.
Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone. Do it. We're thinking about releasing some largemouth bass into games like do it.
Love it.
I like my hometown.
It sounds great.
Hometown blues. Take it away.
Cue John Cougar Mellencamp.
Have you ever had
do it. Tell me.
A melonham? John Cougar Mellenham?
John Cougar. John Cougar's Mellenhams. I love the smell of ham too. That's so good.